I'm going on a date with a coworker, my wife said after 19 years together. I gave her one warning. Walk out that door, everything changes. She walked. What happened next broke her in ways she never expected. I didn't fight, didn't beg, didn't make a scene. I just vanished. Completely. My name is Jerome Carlisle. I'm 47 years old, and until that Tuesday, I thought I had it all figured out. I ran my own CPA practice from a small office downtown. Nothing fancy, but steady. Good clients, honest work, enough to put 2 kids through college and keep the mortgage paid. Aria was finishing her junior year at Northwestern, studying marketing. Benjamin had just started his second semester at Ohio State, engineering track. I was proud of them, proud of what Ruby and I had built together. That Tuesday started like any other. I'd spent the day reviewing tax returns for a manufacturing client, left the office around 5:30, stopped at the dry cleaners to pick up my suits, grabbed a rotisserie chicken from the grocery store for dinner. Ruby had texted earlier saying she'd be home late, another client dinner. Nothing unusual. By the time I pulled into our driveway in Naperville, the sun was already setting behind the neighbors' oak trees. I heated up the chicken, made a simple salad, poured myself a glass of water, ate alone at the dining table, scrolling through emails on my phone. Benjamin had sent photos from campus, him and his roommate at some basketball game. I smiled, sent back a thumbs up. The house felt too quiet without the kids, but I'd gotten used to it over the past year. Ruby came home around 8:15. I heard her car in the garage, the familiar sound of her heels clicking across the tile floor. She carried her leather work bag and a smaller gym duffel I didn't recognize. Her hair was pulled back in that sleek ponytail she wore for important meetings. Makeup still perfect despite the long day. Hey, I called from the living room where I'd settled with my laptop, working on a quarterly report. She didn't answer right away, just walked past me toward the kitchen, set her bags on the counter. I heard her open the refrigerator, the clink of a wine bottle being pulled from the rack. There's chicken left if you're hungry, I offered, keeping my tone light. I ate already. Her voice was flat, distracted. I should have felt it then, that shift in the air. The way her shoulders held tension, she usually saved for difficult clients. But I was focused on the spreadsheet in front of me, trying to reconcile a discrepancy in inventory numbers. She walked back into the living room, wine glass in hand, and stood near the fireplace. Just stood there, looking at our wedding photo on the mantel. The one from Lake Michigan, both of us laughing, so young we barely recognized ourselves anymore. Jerome, I need to tell you something. I looked up from my laptop. Her face was calm, almost eerily so, like she'd rehearsed this moment in her head a dozen times. I'm going on a date with someone from work. The words hung in the air between us. For a second, maybe 2, I thought I'd misheard her. My brain couldn't process what she just said. 19 years of marriage, 2 kids, a life we'd built from nothing, and she was standing there telling me she was going on a date. Not asking permission, not seeking my input, just stating a fact. What? The word came out softer than I intended. I'm going on a date, Ruby repeated, her voice steady. With Brad. From the agency. We've been working together on the Harrison account, and he asked me out. I said yes. My hands went still on the keyboard. I set the laptop aside carefully, deliberately, buying myself time to think, to breathe, to figure out if this was some kind of sick joke. You're married, I said, my voice level. We're married. I know. She took a sip of wine, her eyes meeting mine without flinching. But I need to do this. I need to see if there's something more out there. Something more. After 19 years, I was something less. I stood up slowly, walked to where she stood, looked her in the eyes, searching for the woman I'd married, the mother of my children, my partner. She was there, somewhere behind that calm facade, but she felt like a stranger. Ruby, if you walk out that door tonight, everything changes, I said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't manipulation. It was the truth, bare and simple. You understand that, right? This isn't something we come back from. She held my gaze for a long moment. Then she set down her wine glass, picked up her gym bag, and walked toward the front door. I understand, she said over her shoulder. And she left. I stood there in our living room, listening to her car start, listening to the sound of her driving away. The house settled into silence around me. The laptop still glowed on the couch, the spreadsheet waiting for answers I could no longer focus on. They say you know it's over when the shock wears off, and all you feel is clarity. I felt that clarity wash over me like cold water. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a choice. Her choice. I walked to the kitchen, poured her abandoned wine down the sink, rinsed the glass, set it in the dishwasher. Then I went upstairs to our bedroom and opened my closet. It was time to make a choice of my own. I worked through the night with methodical precision. No crying, no rage, no desperate phone calls. Just one item after another, pulled from the closet, folded, placed in the suitcase. My hand stayed steady, even when my mind wanted to spiral. The thing about being an accountant is you learn to see things clearly. Numbers don't lie. They don't make excuses. Ruby had just shown me her numbers, and they didn't add up to a marriage worth saving. By 3 a.m, my side of the walk-in closet stood empty. Bare hangers swayed slightly from the air conditioning vent. The space looked skeletal, like ribs showing through skin. I'd taken only what was mine: clothes, a few books from my nightstand, my laptop, toiletries. Everything that made the room smell like me, cedar and sandalwood cologne, was gone. I left everything else untouched. The framed photos from our anniversary trip to Sedona stayed on her dresser. The wedding album remained on the shelf. Our kids' baby pictures, graduation photos, all of it stayed exactly where it belonged, in the home I was leaving behind. In the kitchen, I assembled the documents I'd need. Not for revenge, just for clarity. I'd spent weeks preparing our taxes, so everything was already organized. I made copies of our joint account statements, property deeds, investment portfolios. Then I did something most men wouldn't think to do. I transferred the house deed entirely into Ruby's name, refinanced it online through our bank, putting all responsibility solely on her. The car she drove, a leased Audi Q5 she loved, I signed over the lease. Our joint checking account, I withdrew my half, opened a new account at a different bank, left her portion untouched plus an extra $5,000. It took 4 hours of paperwork, but by dawn, I'd legally extracted myself from our shared life. No lawyers yet, no drama, just clean cuts. I left a folder on the kitchen counter. Inside, all the new account information, signed documents, passwords to utilities she'd need. No note, no explanation. The facts spoke for themselves. My wedding ring went into a small wooden box in my sock drawer. Not thrown away, not pawned, just set aside. Somewhere she'd find it eventually, if she ever looked. At 6:15 a.m, my Uber arrived. I'd requested it 30 minutes earlier, watching the little car icon move closer on my phone. I took one last look at the house. 23 years of mortgage payments. Countless weekends spent maintaining it, upgrading it, making it a home. I didn't feel sad. I felt free. The driver, a guy in his 30s with kind eyes, helped me load 2 suitcases into his trunk. "Early flight?" he asked. "New beginning," I answered. He nodded like he understood, didn't press for details. As we pulled away from the curb, I didn't look back at the house. Didn't watch it disappear in the side mirror. That chapter was closed, and I'd already moved on to the next page. Ruby would come home to silence. No shoes by the door, no coffee brewing, no husband waiting for an explanation. Just her choices, and the space they'd created. The Uber dropped me at Union Station in Chicago. I bought a ticket on the next train heading west, didn't matter where. Ended up in Denver by evening, then caught a Greyhound further into the mountains. By the 3rd day, I was in a town called Ridgway, Colorado. Population 800, give or take. I rented a room above a hardware store for $200 a week, paid cash. The owner, a man in his 70s named Walt, didn't ask questions. Just handed me a key and pointed to the stairs. The room was basic. Single bed, small table, hot plate, bathroom down the hall. A window overlooked Main Street, all 4 blocks of it. I could see the whole town from up there. Coffee shop, post office, general store, and not much else. I didn't tell anyone my real name. When Walt asked what to call me, I said Jay. Simple, forgettable. He nodded and went back to organizing his inventory. Those first weeks were the hardest, not emotionally, but practically. I had money, enough for my half of the savings to last a year if I was careful. But money without purpose is just numbers in an account. I needed something to do, some way to anchor myself. I started walking the town every morning. Noticed things. The coffee shop needed new signage. The community center had a broken railing. Small things, fixable things. I offered to help, didn't ask for payment, just traded labor for conversation. Word spread in a town that small. Within 2 weeks, people started approaching me with odd jobs. Fix a leaky faucet, repair a fence, balance someone's small business books. I did it all. Charged almost nothing. Build a reputation as reliable. The thing about starting over in a place where nobody knows you is the freedom. No history, no expectations, no disappointed looks. I was just Jay, the quiet guy who fixed things. At night, I wrote. Not fiction, not poetry, just thoughts. Observations about what it means to walk away from everything you've built. How silence can be louder than shouting. How dignity costs more than pride, but buys you peace. I published some of it on a blog I created. Nothing fancy. Called it Walking Away. Notes from the Edge. Didn't use my real name. Didn't include photos. Just words, raw and honest. 3 people read the first post. Then 12. Then 50. Men mostly, reaching out through the contact form, telling me their stories. How they felt invisible in their own homes. How they'd been taken for granted so long they'd started to believe they deserved it. I didn't give advice. I just shared what I'd learned. That leaving isn't weakness, it's self-preservation. That you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let go completely. By the end of my first month in Ridgeway, I had a routine. Work during the day, write at night, sleep without nightmares. My phone stayed off, buried in my duffel bag. No social media, no email, no digital footprint. I was learning to be nobody, and nobody had never felt so much like somebody. Ruby came home that night around 11, smelling of wine and expensive cologne that wasn't mine. The house greeted her with silence, so complete it probably felt like judgment. She called my name. No answer. Checked the garage. My car was gone. She texted me, then called, straight to voicemail. Probably assumed I was sulking at a hotel, playing the wounded husband, waiting for her to apologize. She didn't find the folder until the next morning. Made herself coffee, opened her laptop to check work emails, and there it was on the counter. Plain manila, her name written in my careful handwriting. Inside, she found documents that rewrote her world. The house deed, her name only. Car title, her responsibility. Bank statements showing I'd taken only what was mine, left her more than her share. A list of passwords, utility contacts, everything she'd need. No note, no accusations. Just the practical dissolution of a shared life. According to her sister Kelly, who called me months later to yell at me, Ruby's first reaction was anger. How dare I leave without a fight? How dare I make it so clean, so final? She wanted the drama, the confrontation, the chance to explain herself. But I denied her that. Left her nothing to push against, no emotional leverage to manipulate. She told people I'd overreacted. Told her friends at the agency that I'd thrown a tantrum over one dinner date. Made herself the victim of a controlling husband who couldn't handle her independence. Some people believed her. Her work friends, mostly. The ones who'd been encouraging her to live a little and explore her options. But others saw through it. Her sister Kelly was the first. She called Ruby the day after, asked point blank if she'd really expected me to stay while she dated someone else. Jerome's different, Ruby had said, using the excuse she'd probably rehearsed. He understands I need space to figure things out. Kelly's response was blunt. He understood you made a choice. And he made one too. You don't get to be surprised by that. Their mother sided with Kelly. Her father, a retired Marine, didn't call her for 3 weeks. When he finally did, his voice was cold. I raise you better than this, he'd said, then hung up. The fallout at work came slower but hit harder. Brad Hutchinson, her co-worker, the man she'd gone on that date with, turned out to be married. Very married. 2 kids, mortgage in the suburbs, the whole package. His wife found out within a week. Someone at the agency, feeling guilty or vindictive, sent her an anonymous message with details. Dates, times, the hotel where they'd met. Brad's wife filed for divorce immediately. Took the kids, took half his income, took his reputation. HR got involved. There were meetings, stern warnings about workplace conduct. Ruby tried to distance herself, claimed she didn't know he was married, that he'd misled her. But people at the agency talked. They'd seen the way she looked at him in meetings, the lingering touches, the private jokes. Invitations to after-work drinks stopped coming. The promotions she'd been promised stalled out. Her supervisor, a woman named Patricia who'd mentored her for years, became professionally distant. You made your bed, Patricia told her during a performance review. Now you're lying in it alone. Ruby came home each night to our house, her house now, and the silence grew heavier. No one to cook dinner with, no one to watch television beside, no sound of my laptop keys clicking late at night. Just her, and the choices she'd made. Ruby waited 2 weeks before she started looking for me. 2 weeks of telling herself I'd come crawling back, that I was just making a point, that no man walked away from 19 years without eventually wanting to talk. When I didn't, she panicked. She started with my business partner, Greg, who handled the few clients I'd referred before disappearing. He told her I'd signed everything over to him, clean and legal, wouldn't say where I'd gone. Jerome made his choice, Greg said, his voice carefully neutral. Maybe you should respect it. She tried my college roommate, Paul, who I'd golfed with twice a year. He hadn't heard from me. Tried the guy who ran the dry cleaners, the neighbors, even our family doctor. Nobody knew anything, or if they did, they weren't telling her. She hired a private investigator 3 weeks in. A woman named Susan Reeves, came highly recommended, charged $200 an hour. Susan searched credit card records, found nothing after the initial Uber ride to Union Station. Bank withdrawals stopped after I'd opened the new account. No digital footprint, no social media activity, no paper trail. It's like he evaporated, Susan told her during their second meeting. No cell phone pings, no new utility accounts, no employment records. If he's out there, he's living completely off-grid. Ruby paid her for another week of searching. Susan came back with one lead, barely worth mentioning. A retired couple from Oak Park said they'd seen someone matching my description at a rest stop in Iowa. Bearded, thinner, heading west. That was it. She found my blog by accident, scrolling through search results at 2 in the morning, wine glass in hand. Walking away. Notes from the edge. No author name, no photos, just essays about starting over, about dignity, about the quiet strength of choosing yourself. The writing style felt familiar. The way sentences were structured, precise and measured. The observations about marriage, about being taken for granted, about watching someone you love become a stranger. One post stopped her cold. It was titled The Glass of Water. I set my glass down so carefully that night, it read. Didn't want to make a sound. Didn't want to add noise to what was already breaking. She walked out like it was nothing, like 19 years could be dismissed with a shrug and a gym bag. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just started packing, one piece of clothing at a time. And with each item folded, I felt lighter. Not broken. Free. She read it 4 times, hands shaking. It had to be me. The details were too specific, too close. But there was no way to confirm it, no contact information, no way to reach whoever was writing these words. The comment section was full of men thanking the author, sharing their own stories, saying these words had given them permission to leave, to choose themselves, to stop being invisible. Ruby closed her laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. Somewhere out there, I was helping other men do what I'd done to her. I was turning our marriage into lessons for strangers, and there was nothing she could do about it. The investigator sent her final report a week later. No current address, no employment records, no contacts, just a note at the bottom. Subject has effectively disappeared. Suggest client cease search and move forward. Ruby paid the bill and stopped looking. Not because she'd accepted it, but because she'd run out of places to search. I'd become a ghost in my own life, and ghosts can't be found by people they're haunting. 6 months in my new life, I'd built something unexpected. Not wealth, not status, just peace. In a small community that valued me for what I did, not what I'd failed to be. The blog had grown beyond anything I'd anticipated. 10,000 monthly readers, then 20, then 50. An editor from a small independent publishing house in Portland reached out through the contact form. Her name was Rachel Kim. She'd read every post, seen something in the rawness that she thought could become more. Have you ever considered turning this into a book? She asked during our first phone call. I hadn't. The blog was therapy, a way to process what had happened. But as we talked, the idea took shape. Not a memoir exactly, but a guide. A roadmap for men who'd lost themselves in marriages that had stopped valuing them. I want to stay anonymous, I told her. No photos, no real name, no publicity. Rachel agreed. The words matter more than the face behind them. We worked on it for 8 months. I'd write in the evenings after my handyman jobs, send her chapters. She'd edit and send them back. The process was meticulous, painful sometimes, dredging up memories I tried to bury. But it was also cathartic. Each chapter one finished felt like another weight lifted. Another piece of the old Jerome left behind. We titled it, The Man Who Walked Quietly. Rachel designed a cover, minimalist, just a silhouette of a man on a mountain trail at dawn. No author photo, just the pseudonym, J.R. Maris. The book released on a Tuesday in October. Rachel sent me the first copy, held it in my hands in my small room above Walt's hardware store. It felt surreal, seeing my pain transformed into something tangible, something that might help someone else. Sales started slow, a few dozen copies in the first week. Then a book blogger picked it up, wrote a review that went viral. "This isn't just a book about divorce," she wrote. "It's about reclaiming dignity when the world tells you to fight dirty." Within a month, we'd sold 5,000 copies. Then 10,000. Therapists started recommending it to clients. Divorce lawyers bought it in bulk for their waiting rooms. 3 months after release, Rachel called with news that made me set down my coffee. "You're number one," she said. New York Times bestseller list. Nonfiction hardcover. I stood in my small room, looking out at the mountains that had become my sanctuary, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not pride exactly, but validation. Proof that walking away didn't make you weak. It made you human. The royalties started coming in. More money than I needed. More than I'd expected. I kept living simply, put most of it into investments, donated some to the community center in Ridgeway that had given me odd jobs when I first arrived. I wasn't Jerome Carlisle anymore. I was J.R. Maris, a name that meant something different, something stronger. And somewhere back in Illinois, Ruby had no idea that the husband who'd disappeared had just become someone the world was starting to listen to. Ruby walked into the Barnes & Noble in downtown Naperville on a Saturday afternoon in late November. She needed a gift for her boss's birthday, something neutral and professional. A book seemed like the safest option. The air outside was bitter cold, threatening the first real snow of the season. Inside, the store was warm, smelling of coffee and new paper. She wandered toward the nonfiction section near the entrance, where bestsellers were displayed on a large wooden table. Business memoirs, political books, self-help volumes. She scanned titles absently, looking for something appropriate. Then her eyes caught on a cover that made her stop. Matte black with copper lettering. A silhouette of a man on a mountain trail at sunrise, face turned away from the camera. Something about the figure's posture struck her as familiar. The set of the shoulders, the way he stood, purposeful but not aggressive. The title read, The Man Who Walked Quietly. She picked it up with both hands, turned it over. The back cover had blurbs from therapists and authors she'd never heard of. A roadmap for dignified departure, one said. This book will change how you see strength, another claimed. The author photo was just a shadow, a profile where no features were visible. The name beneath it, J.R. Maris. She didn't recognize the name, but something about the whole package pulled at her, some instinct she'd learned not to trust. She opened to a random page, middle of chapter 4. Started reading. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was realizing how long I'd been gone before I actually walked out the door. Years of small dismissals, tiny betrayals, moments where I was standing right there, but somehow invisible. I'd become furniture in my own home, useful when needed, ignored the rest of the time. You tell yourself it's a phase, that work is stressful, that things will get better, but they don't. They just get quieter. Her hand started shaking. The words felt aimed, specific, too close. But thousands of men probably felt this way. She told herself that as she flipped to the table of contents. Chapter 7 caught her eye. The night, everything changed. She turned to that page, heart pounding now. She told me she was going on a date. Just like that, casual as ordering coffee. 19 years of marriage, and she needed to explore her options. I gave her one warning, clear and simple. Walk out that door, everything changes. She walked without hesitation. I packed through the night. By sunrise, I was gone. Left her everything except my dignity. That I took with me. Ruby's vision blurred. 19 years. The warning. The packing. The Tuesday night. This couldn't be coincidence. The timeline matched too perfectly. She bought the book without looking at anything else. Walked to her car in a daze. Sat in the parking lot with the engine off. Started reading from page 1. The dedication page stopped her immediately. To the moment I stopped asking to be chosen. She sat with that for 5 full minutes before turning the page. By page 50, she knew with absolute certainty. The details were sanitized enough to be generic, but she recognized herself in every description. The wife's ambition, her need for validation, her drift away from the marriage while still living in it. The narrator talked about tax season, about working late on client returns while his wife attended networking events, about fixing things around the house while she planned weekend trips with coworkers who mattered more. She read through sunset, through dinner time, into the night. Sat in her driveway with the dome light on, unable to stop. The middle chapters describe the narrator's realization that he'd become invisible. How he told himself she was just busy, that they'd reconnect later. Once, he wrote. An endless series of postponements that I accepted because the alternative was too painful. The book wasn't cruel. That destroyed her most. It wasn't revenge or character assassination. It was honest. Brutally honest about what it felt like to be dismissed, to give everything and receive indifference. The chapter about leaving was clinical, precise. He described packing methodically, leaving the house, the car, the joint accounts, signing everything over with care. I didn't take anything that would hurt her, he wrote. I took only what was mine. My dignity, my self-respect, my future. Those were the only possessions that mattered. The final chapter was titled, Peace Without Permission. People ask if I'm angry, it read. If I hate her, if I want revenge. I don't. Anger requires caring about their opinion. Revenge requires giving them power over your peace. I have neither anymore. She probably thinks I'm somewhere nursing wounds, waiting for her to apologize. But I don't need her apology. I don't need her understanding. I don't need anything from her at all. That's the freedom she gave me when she walked out that door. She released me from the obligation of caring what she thinks. And in that release, I found myself again. Ruby closed the book at 2 in the morning. She'd been sitting in her car for over 6 hours. Her eyes were swollen, her throat raw from crying. She looked at the house through the windshield. The house I'd left behind. The house that was supposed to feel like freedom, but instead felt like a tomb filled with regret. For 9 months, she told herself I'd overreacted, that I was weak for leaving. But this book showed her something different. I hadn't run away. I'd walked towards something better, with more grace and dignity than she deserved. She looked at the author bio. J.R. Maris lives in the Rocky Mountains and writes about dignity, rebuilding, and finding peace in unexpected places. Somewhere in those mountains, the man she'd taken for granted for 19 years had become a best-selling author, had transformed his pain into something meaningful for thousands of people, while she turned hers into nothing but an empty house and overwhelming regret. Ruby started writing to me the next day. Not to my old email, that was dead. Not to my phone, disconnected. She wrote to the publisher, Attention J.R. Maris. The first letter was short, formal. Dear Mr. Maris, I read your book. I think I know who you are. If I'm right, I need to talk to you. Please. Just once. Ruby. She mailed it Monday morning, spent the week checking her mailbox compulsively. Morning, afternoon, evening. No response. She wrote again. Longer this time, abandoning formality. Jerome, if this is you, please let me explain. I made a mistake. I see that now. What I did was wrong, selfish, cruel. I just need to know you're okay, that you're happy somewhere. Please write back. Still nothing. Third letter. Fourth. By the 6th week, she'd sent 11 letters. Each one longer, more raw, more desperate than the last. I've lost everything, she wrote in letter 9. My job promoted someone else. My friend stopped calling. Aria won't speak to me for more than 5 minutes. Benjamin answers my texts with one-word replies. Even my own parents look at me like I'm a stranger they're disappointed in. I know I deserve this. I know it's consequences for what I did. But please, just tell me you're okay. That's all I need to know. Letter 12 described seeing Brad at a coffee shop. His wife destroyed him in the divorce. Took the kids, the house, half his retirement. He tried to talk to me, wanted to reminisce about what we had. I walked away without saying a word. What we had nothing. I destroyed my marriage for absolutely nothing. By letter 15, she was writing at 3 in the morning, wine-drunk and desperate. Do you ever think about me? Do you hate me? I hope you hate me. That would mean I still matter somehow, even negatively. The thought that you might feel nothing, That I might be completely irrelevant to you now. That's worse than hatred. At least hatred is an emotion. At least it means I still exist in your world. She wrote about Thanksgiving alone. I cooked a turkey for one, set the table like we used to, with the good china. Then I sat there by myself and realized this is my life now. This is what I chose when I walked out that door. She wrote about Arya visiting for an hour, standing in the doorway the whole time like she didn't want to come inside. She said, "You had the best man I've ever known, and you threw him away for what?" A few months of feeling wanted by someone new. I couldn't answer her. What could I say? Letter 20 described her father showing up unannounced. He stood in the driveway looking at the house you helped him build the deck for. Looked at me with this quiet disgust. Said, 21 years that man gave you. And you threw it away for what? Then he left without staying for coffee. What Ruby didn't know was that every letter reached me. The publisher forwarded them to a P.O. box I'd set up in a neighboring town. I drove there once a month, collected whatever had accumulated. I read the first few letters completely. Sat with them in my truck in the post office parking lot. Her handwriting unchanged after all these years. Her words desperate, pleading, full of regret. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction at her suffering. Not anger at her audacity. Not even pity. Just a distant observation that the woman who'd walked out so confidently had discovered consequences, and consequences didn't care about apologies. After the fifth letter, I stopped reading them completely. Just opened them enough to confirm they were from her, then filed them in a box in my closet, unread. The letters weren't for me anyway. They were therapy for her. Attempts to relieve her guilt, to transfer her pain onto the person she'd wounded. She wanted me to respond, to engage, to give her some role in my new life, even if it was just as someone I forgave or someone I hated. But I wouldn't give her that. Not because I was being cruel or vindictive. Because her pain, her regret, her suffering, none of it was my responsibility anymore. After letter 23, they stopped coming. Either she'd given up, or she'd finally accepted what I'd known since that Tuesday night in March when she walked out the door. Some doors, once closed, don't reopen. Some bridges, once burned, don't rebuild. Some people, once you walk away from them, stay walked away from. I wasn't being heartless. I was being honest with myself. And honesty, real honesty, sometimes looks like silence. Ruby had stopped looking for me. Stopped writing letters that went unanswered. Stopped checking the author's website for tour dates or public appearances that never materialized. Nearly 18 months had passed since that Tuesday night, and she'd learned to live with the silence. Then the invitation arrived. A thick cream-colored envelope, hand-addressed, delivered by courier to her office on a Wednesday afternoon. Her name written in elegant calligraphy she didn't recognize. No return address. Inside, embossed stationery announced an exclusive literary event. An evening with contemporary voices. A private conversation on resilience and rebuilding. Location: a small venue in Boulder, Colorado. Date: 3 weeks away. Limited attendance. Invitation only. At the bottom, in smaller text, featured speaker, J.R. Maris, author of The Man Who Walked Quietly. Ruby read it 3 times, hands trembling. This was it. A chance to see me, to talk to me, to somehow make me understand. She booked a flight that same afternoon, reserved a hotel room, requested time off work. The venue was intimate, maybe 50 seats in a restored theater with exposed brick walls and soft lighting. Ruby arrived early, dressed carefully in a navy dress that used to be my favorite, though she wondered if I'd even remember. People filtered in slowly. Readers, therapists, a few other authors. Everyone spoke in hushed, respectful tones, like they were entering a sacred space. Then I walked in. Ruby's breath stopped completely. I looked different. Thinner, more weathered, but somehow more solid. My hair was longer, touched with more gray. I wore a simple dark blazer over a white shirt, no tie. But it was my eyes that struck her most. They were clear, calm, holding a peace she'd never seen in all our years together. I moved through the room greeting people, shaking hands, smiling easily. The tension I used to carry in my shoulders was gone. I looked like someone who'd finally set down a weight they'd been carrying for decades. I stepped to the small podium as the lights dimmed slightly. Spoke without notes, my voice steady and warm. "Thank you all for being here," I began. "This evening isn't about answers. It's about the questions we ask ourselves when everything we thought we knew falls apart. It's about the space between who we were and who we're becoming. About second chances, not the ones we want, but the ones we earn by choosing ourselves when no one else will. I paused, and in that pause my eyes swept the room, landed on her. Recognition flashed across my face, subtle, controlled. But I didn't react, didn't flinch, just held her gaze for half a second before moving on to someone else. Ruby felt that look like a physical blow. I'd seen her, acknowledged her presence with the emotional weight of noticing a stranger, then dismissed her just as easily. The evening continued. I spoke about transformation, about walking away from what no longer serves you, about finding peace in unexpected places. The audience was rapt, engaged. Asking thoughtful questions, I answered with grace and honesty. Ruby sat frozen, unable to process what she was witnessing. This man, confident and centered and whole, was someone she'd never really known. Or maybe someone I'd always been underneath the exhaustion of trying to be enough for someone who'd already decided I wasn't. When the formal event ended, people lined up to speak with me, to get books signed, to shake my hand. Ruby waited until the crowd thinned, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Finally, she approached. I looked up from signing a book, and our eyes met again. This time longer. I set down my pen carefully, gave the person in front of me their book with a smile, then turned my full attention to her. Ruby. My voice was neutral, polite. The tone you'd use with an old acquaintance you'd run into unexpectedly. Jerome. Her voice cracked on my name. She steadied it, forced herself to continue. Was any of this meant for me? The invitation, the event, any of it? I was quiet for a moment, considering. Then I answered with careful honesty. The invitation was meant for you. I thought you should know that I'm okay, that I've built something meaningful for what happened. But this, I gestured to the room, to the remnants of the evening. This isn't about you anymore. It stopped being about you the moment I walked out that door. Jerome, she started, but I gently interrupted. I know. I've read your letters. All 23 of them. Hope flared in her eyes. Then you know I'm sorry. You know I understand now what I did, what I threw away. I do know, I said quietly. And I'm glad you understand. I'm glad you've learned something from this. But understanding doesn't change anything between us, Ruby. It doesn't rebuild what was destroyed. It just means you won't make the same mistakes with someone else. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. Was it revenge? This book, this whole thing, was it to hurt me? I looked at her for a long moment, saw the desperation, the regret, the hope that I might still care enough to be angry. No, I said, and I meant it. It was never revenge. It was self-respect. The words hung in the air between us, final and complete. Ruby's eyes filled with tears. I miss you. I miss us. I miss who we were. We were never what you're remembering, I said gently. You miss the idea of us, the security, the stability, the life we built. But you don't miss me, Ruby. You never really saw me enough to miss who I actually was. Someone approached from the side, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a warm smile. She placed a hand lightly on my arm, a gesture of easy familiarity. Jerome, we should probably head out soon. Early flight tomorrow. I nodded, then looked back at Ruby one last time. I wish you well. I really do. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But you won't find it with me. That door closed a long time ago. I stood, gathered my things, and walked toward the exit with the woman beside me. Didn't look back. Didn't pause. Ruby stood there in the emptying venue, watching me disappear into the night with someone who clearly knew a version of me she'd never bothered to discover. And for the first time, she understood that some losses are permanent. Some chances, once missed, don't come around again. I was gone, not just physically, but emotionally, completely, and no amount of regret would bring me back. 3 years after I left, I stood on the deck of my cabin in Ridgeway, watching the sun rise over the mountains. The air was crisp, clean, carrying the scent of pine and possibility. My second book was in final edits, due to the publisher next month. This one was different from the first. Less about leaving, more about building. About what comes after you walk away, when the anger fades and you're left with just yourself and the question of who you want to become. Sales from the first book had given me financial security I'd never imagined. I'd invested carefully, lived simply, donated generously to causes that mattered. The cabin was paid for. My truck was old but reliable. I wanted for nothing because I needed very little. Arya called every Sunday. We'd rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully, both of us acknowledging the pain that our mother's choices had caused. She graduated from Northwestern with honors, landed a job at a marketing firm in Chicago, was thriving. She told me she was proud of me, proud of how I'd handled everything. Benjamin visited twice a year, during summer and winter breaks. We'd hike the mountain trails, fish in the streams, talk about everything and nothing. He told me once, sitting by a campfire, that I'd taught him the most important lesson of his life. That walking away from disrespect isn't weakness, it's wisdom. The book tour for The Man Who Walked Quietly had taken me to 15 cities. I'd met thousands of men who saw themselves in my story. Received hundreds of messages from people who said my words had given them permission to choose themselves, to stop settling, to demand better. I'd also met Sarah, the woman who'd stood beside me at the Boulder event. She was a grief counselor, had lost her husband to cancer 5 years earlier, understood the weight of starting over. We'd been seeing each other for 8 months now, taking it slow, building something on foundations of honesty and mutual respect. She didn't ask me to be anything other than who I was. Didn't need me to fill some role or meet some expectation. We were just two people who'd survived their own kinds of loss and found each other on the other side. Ruby had tried to contact me one more time, 6 months after the Boulder event. A single email that somehow found its way through my filters. She'd written that she'd started therapy, was working on understanding her patterns, her need for external validation, her fear of aging that had driven her to make destructive choices. She said she hoped I was happy, that she was trying to become someone who deserved happiness too. She didn't ask for forgiveness or another chance, just said she was sorry, and she hoped that someday I could remember the good parts of what we'd had without the pain of how it ended. I'd read it once, felt nothing but a distant hope that she found whatever peace she was looking for. Then I deleted it, not out of spite, but out of completion. That chapter of my life was over, and dwelling in it served no purpose. I'd learned that healing isn't about forgetting. It's about remembering without the sting, about transforming pain into wisdom, betrayal into boundaries, loss into lessons that make you stronger. Standing on that deck, coffee in hand, mountains stretching endlessly before me, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Complete peace. Not happiness exactly, though I was happy, but peace. The deep, unshakable kind that comes from living in alignment with who you actually are instead of who someone else needs you to be. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Morning, Mountain Man. Still on for dinner tonight? I'm making that pasta you pretend not to love. I smiled, typed back. Wouldn't miss it. I'll bring wine. Simple. Easy. Real. I'd walked away from everything I'd known, carrying nothing but 2 suitcases and my dignity. And I'd built a life that was mine, completely and utterly mine. A life where I was seen, valued, chosen daily. The old Jerome, the one who'd folded himself into smaller and smaller shapes, trying to fit into Ruby's life, was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, wiser, more complete. I didn't need anyone's permission to matter anymore. Didn't need validation from someone who'd spent 19 years teaching me I wasn't enough. I was enough. More than enough. And I'd proven it to the only person whose opinion truly mattered. Myself. The sun cleared the mountain peaks, bathing everything in gold. I took a deep breath, let out slowly, and smiled. This was freedom. This was peace. This was the life I'd earned by having the courage to walk away from the one that was killing me slowly. And it was better than anything I'd left behind.